So if Seven becomes like a surrogate mother to One in this episode, and Janeway is like a surrogate mother to Seven, does that make Janeway a surrogate grandmother? What kind of grandmother would Janeway be? The kind that dotes on you and gives you money and candy, or the kind that feeds you nothing but plain watery oatmeal and demands that you keep silent while she's watching her stories, or else she'll go cut herself a switch? I'd say it's a pick'em. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Drone. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what Borg would be like if it happened on Voyager, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. You got Borg on my 29th century gadget. You got 29th century gadget on my Borg. Is this episode going to be a Star Trek Reese's Cup? Let's find out. Seven is practicing her smile in the mirror like a psychopath when the doctor walks in. She's like, "Can you knock?" And the doctor's like, "Oh, sorry, I guess the door making the same incredibly loud noise that it makes every time it opens wasn't enough to let you know I was coming in. Anyway, let's go. It's time for our away mission to study a nebula, which I, a hologram, am able to go on thanks to my handy-dandy 29th century mobile emitter. Boy, I sure do love this thing. I'd hate if anything ever happened to it." Seven, the doctor, Tom Paris, and B'Elanna Torres are on a shuttlecraft together studying the nebula. B'Elanna and Tom talk about how crowded the shuttle is, and Seven says, "You should just design and build a new shuttlecraft." And B'Elanna's like, "Say, that's a great idea. I can't think of a single reason why the crew of a starship with limited resources that's been completely cut off from all institutional support for over 4 years now shouldn't be able to manufacture a new support craft from scratch. Hell, building it will probably be such a non-issue that I bet if it gets destroyed someday, we can just build another one to replace it and go on like nothing ever happened. This is a great idea." But that will have to wait for a future episode, because right now, this nebula is causing some serious problems. Tom sends out a distress call to Voyager, and Janeway orders them to move in and beam the away team out of there. The away team arrives safely in the transporter room, but the doctor's mobile emitter is damaged. B'Elanna transfers the doctor to sickbay, leaving his emitter behind. B'Elanna takes the emitter to the science lab and begins a scan on it that will apparently take all night. So she's doing the full scan, not the smart scan, I guess. She tells the transporter chief, Mulcahy, to check the results in the morning. After they leave, little Borg tubies project out of the emitter and into the computer console. The next morning, the doctor pops up on the computer monitor in B'Elanna's room like, "Hey, how's my mobile emitter? Have you checked on it yet? Why don't you get your ass out of bed and check on it? Now! Why aren't you doing it right now?" B'Elanna hangs up on the doctor and goes into the bathroom. The doctor appears on the monitor in the bathroom like, "If you think of anything important about my emitter while you're in the shower, be sure and let me know, okay?" B'Elanna, who was naked when the doctor called, grabs a towel like, "Excuse you?" But the doctor shrugs it off like, "Please, I've seen the primary and secondary sex characteristics of everyone on this ship. I get no thrill from secretly observing people in the bathroom. I'm a doctor, not a janitor." Hey, before we move on, I have a question. Why is there a computer terminal in the bathroom to begin with? Isn't that a little like having a telephone mounted on the wall next to the toilet? For you Zoomers out there, before we all carried our phones around in our pockets, we had to plug them into the walls of our houses, and people would often have phones in various rooms, living room, kitchen, bedroom, but never in the bathroom, because that would be weird. Why would you want the ability to take a phone call in the bathroom? If you're ever in someone's house and you notice they have a telephone installed in their bathroom, get the hell out of there as soon as you can. And then climb back into the time machine that brought you there and return to the present. Seven suddenly wakes up in the middle of a regeneration cycle and goes to the bridge and tells Chakotay that her Borg sense is tingling. Harry assures her that there are no Borg in the area, and Chakotay tells Seven to go to sickbay and get her head examined. Meanwhile, Mulcahy shows up at the science lab to check the scan results on the mobile emitter. He walks in like, "Hey, I don't remember leaving the scary green horror movie lights on when I left last night." Mulcahy walks up to the console, which has been all Borged up, and he gets stabbed in the neck by the little Borg tubies. Oh no, not... That guy? Harry detects that Borg stuff is happening in the science lab, so Chakotay pages Seven to let her know. She's in sickbay, and the doctor overhears, and he's like, "The science lab? My mobile emitter! Save my emitter! I don't care how many lives you have to sacrifice!" Seven joins up with Tuvok and his security team, and they enter the science lab. Mulcahy is unconscious with a vampire bite on his neck, but otherwise he seems fine. There's a big tank in the room now, which Seven identifies as a Borg maturation chamber. They look inside and discover a Borg fetus being grown. The Borg fetus is a combination of Mulcahy's DNA, Seven's Borg nanoprobes, and the Doctor's mobile emitter, which were somehow combined when they beamed back from the shuttlecraft when they were studying that nebula. The Borg fetus is developing at a rapid pace. Janeway arrives in the science lab and says, "Okay, let's put up a force field and post guards around the clock." Seven's like, "You're not gonna kill it? You're not going to kill the Borg fetus that's growing inside your ship?" Janeway goes, "No, wouldn't be much of an episode if I did that. So I'm going to force the entire ship to carry this high-risk pregnancy to term. I'm pro-life this week." The fetus outgrows the incubator and is fully mature by, the next day. He's not an ordinary Borg drone, though, because he was created through a combination of Seven's Borg bits and the Doctor's 29th century mobile emitter. He's a far more technologically advanced Borg than any ever encountered before. Before the drone becomes fully operational, Seven says to Janeway, "Are you sure you don't want to pull the plug on this guy? Because if the rest of the Borg find out about him and assimilate his advanced technology, that would be really bad for literally everybody." Janeway's like, "Yeah, but at this point killing him would be murder, and the last thing I would ever do is murder someone on my ship." In the past, I've pointed out times when Voyager would be a better show if you hadn't watched TNG. This is one of those times when Voyager would be a better show if you hadn't watched Voyager. The drone wakes up, and right away he's all, "We're Borg, what is our designation?" Seven says, "It doesn't matter what your designation is!" She tells him that this isn't the Borg Collective, that he is an individual, but the drone doesn't get it and keeps giving programmed Borg responses. Seven goes, "I've got a great idea. Maybe if the drone assimilates more information about us, it'll snap him out of this 'we are Borg, state our designation' phase he's in." So they download a bunch of data from the computer into a Borg hard drive Seven has lying around in the cargo bay, and the drone jabs it with his little tubies, and suddenly he's like, "Hey, I get it. I'm on a ship traveling through space. And I'm an individual with my own thoughts and personality. This is great. I see my future stretching out before me like the cosmos itself, filled with possibilities. Oh, I can't wait to live. To live!" Seven has Neelix escort the drone to sickbay for a checkup. On the way, the drone notices a crew member reacting to him and says to Neelix, "She was frightened by me." Neelix asks, "What makes you say that?" And the drone's like, "She involuntarily urinated." Neelix tells the drone that they can't keep calling him the drone. He's like, "Everyone needs a name, including you." "You?" "No, not you. Hugh." "Who is Hugh?" "I is Neelix. Nice to meet you." Anyway, they get to sickbay and the drone meets the doctor and he's like, "Hey, I know you. I've got your mobile emitter in my brain." The doctor's like, "Yeah, you sure do. How's that working for you, by the way? If it starts to itch or give you any problems, you just say the word and I'll yank it right out of there." Seven shows the drone around the ship. He uses his advanced technology to help out in engineering, showing B'Elanna a better way to study the expansion of the nebula. He meets Captain Janeway and tells her that he has chosen a name for himself, One. So, One and Janeway have a quick little chat, then One leaves to go help B'Elanna with something in engineering. Janeway turns to Seven like, "So, for real, how's he doing?" Seven goes, "He's fine. He's great, except he's been asking about the Borg, and I'm worried that if we tell him about them, he'll want to leave and join the collective, and if that happens, it would pose a colossal risk to the entire galaxy," which might sound familiar to you, since I said the same thing a few days ago, and you just blew me off, but whatever. Janeway decides that it would be better for One to learn about the Borg from them than do his own research on the internet, but before they get the chance to tell him anything, One activates a transceiver and sends out a signal that is detected by a Borg ship, which immediately changes course and heads straight for Voyager. Tuvok detects the Borg ship on its way, so Janeway shows up in the cargo bay with an armed security detail and tells Seven, "Wake up your boy. He just called in the Borg." "Oh, you mean like I repeatedly said he would?" "I don't remember that." "Hey, One, what gives? Why'd you snitch us out to the Borg?" "I don't remember that." "Is there an echo in here?" So what happened was, One has a backup transceiver that automatically contacted the Borg without his knowledge. Since the Borg ship is on course to intercept Voyager anyway, Janeway takes One to the astrometrics lab to show him everything they know about the Borg. He watches the early TNG episodes and he's like, "Damn, these Borg are pretty scary. I'm not sure we're gonna make it." And then he gets past Descent and into the Voyager stuff and he's like, "Oh, never mind, we're gonna be fine." The Borg sphere arrives and hails Voyager like, "We're the Borg, we all know how this goes, so lower your shields and prepare to be assimilated at the beep." One uses his advanced technology to enhance Voyager's shields and phasers, but there's only so much he can do. Over the protest of Seven, One beams himself aboard the Borg sphere and takes control of it, piloting it into the nebula, where the unstable gravity crushes and destroys it. One survives thanks to a force field he's placed around himself, and they beam him back aboard Voyager, but he's seriously injured and won't survive much longer without surgery. One's like, "Nah, that doesn't work for me. Now that the Borg are aware that I exist, they'll be after me and my advanced technology, so I think I'll just die." He puts his personal force field up again to stop the doctor from doing the surgery. Seven's like, "Come on, man, don't be like this." One says, "My existence was an accident. A combination of technologies and DNA. I'm basically a walking, talking kit bash. As long as I'm here, I'm putting everyone on Voyager at risk." "Don't die, bro." "I'm dying." "Don't, bro." "I'm dead." Seven is deeply saddened by One's death. The doctor comes up to her and says, "Seven, I am so sorry. But can I get in there? I just need to crack open his skull and get my mobile emitter." Returning to the cargo bay, Seven turns off the Borg alcove One used to regenerate. She's like, "I don't know how I'll be able to go on. The time I spent with him was the best 45 minutes of my life." The poor heartbroken woman can't even muster a smile at her own reflection. Thank God I don't know what that feels like. The end. So, like more than a few installments of Voyager, Drone plays like a TNG episode with the serial number filed off. There's quite a lot of Borg in this one. There's a Borg drone on the ship. The crew tries to teach him how to be an individual. He learns his lesson well and ultimately sacrifices himself for the good of the crew because he realizes his presence will make the ship a continual target of the Borg if he stays. The drone forms a particularly close bond with one member of the crew. The choosing of the drone's name is important. The drone himself is a wide-eyed innocent to contrast with the merciless malevolence of the Borg collective as a whole. If you've seen Borg, you'll find a lot of Drone very familiar, and not in the, "Oh, I see what they did there, what a clever variation on a theme" sort of way, more the, "Did they just copy that other episode" sort of way. Except the writers of the episode, Brian Fuller and Brannon Braga and Joe Menosky, working from a story by Fuller and Harry Clore, seem to realize that they're just copying Borg, so they toss in a few original bits too, so that hopefully we won't notice, like the early business involving the Doctor and his anxious concern about his mobile emitter, or the almost a shower scene with B'Elanna. Borg didn't have a scene where we watched Geordi very nearly take a shower, now did it? Not such a derivative episode now. I also wonder if, when scripting the episode, the writers didn't consciously choose to underplay important beats this version of the story shares with the previous Borg version. For example, in Borg, the naming of Hugh is kind of a big deal. Getting him to accept that as an individual he should have a name, not a Borg designation. Choosing the name, Hugh accepting his new name. It's a whole thing, and it's an important turning point for Hugh's character. In Drone, the drone asks what his designation is a few times. Seven blows him off. Neelix says, "Hey, you should choose a name." And then a little later, the drone walks up to Captain Janeway and says, "My name is One, by the way." Same beat, but it plays as far less significant. The same goes for the drone accepting that he's not part of a collective, but is an individual. In Borg, that was basically Hugh's entire character arc, and he doesn't start referring to himself as I until almost the end of the episode, and it's a very dramatic moment when he does. In Drone, One calls himself We for his first couple of scenes, then he downloads some information about the ship and its mission from a hard drive, and he's like, oh, I'm not a we, I'm an I, okay. And that's pretty much that. It's not so much a meaningful character beat as it is a minor adjustment. It's different from how that beat is presented in Borg, which is good, I guess, but it's different in a superficial way that drains the beat of most of its dramatic impact, which is not good. While the show is shuffling from point to point in this perfunctory, half-remembered reenactment of a beloved TNG episode, it passes up multiple opportunities for drama or conflict or, I don't know, something interesting to happen. The Doctor is all worried about his mobile emitter, but once that mobile emitter winds up stuck in One's brain, he just kind of drops it. There's no tension between the Doctor and One. There's no tension between the Doctor and Janeway. For Janeway's choice to allow One to continue to grow and mature in the fetal stage with the Doctor's emitter in his head. No scene where the Doctor says, you know, it might be a bad thing for the ship to have the only fully trained medical officer on board confined to sickbay because he's a hologram and his mobile emitter is stuck in the brain of a Borg drone. Other than Seven's occasional immediately dismissed protests early on, there's no pushback at all to Janeway's decision to allow the drone to mature and walk around freely on the ship. Shouldn't Chakotay have something to say about it? Or, I don't know, anyone else? These people have had more direct conflict with the Borg Collective by this point than Picard's crew at the time of Borg. But the Voyager crew seems mostly fine with the presence of a Borg drone possessing technologies centuries ahead of anything they have. Also, Mulcahy, the transporter technician, who gets the Borg vampire bite. He utterly disappears from the episode. The drone is made from Mulcahy's DNA. We don't get a scene where Mulcahy meets the drone. We never find out how Mulcahy feels about it, though judging by everyone else in the episode, I'm assuming he has no strong feelings on the matter. Why is Mulcahy even in this episode? He serves no purpose other than to donate his DNA to make the drone. They couldn't have a main character do that? If they wanted to justify the drone being male, why not make Harry the DNA donor, or Tom? They have almost nothing to do in this episode anyway, or hell, make it Neelix. Neelix and One end up having a couple of scenes together anyway, so why not? The primary saving grace of Drone is the actor who plays the drone, J. Paul Boehmer. He gives One a Born Yesterday quality that is convincing and endearing, much of which is imparted through a very impressive physical performance. I love the awkward, eager body language Boehmer adopts as One, like an adult-sized toddler staggering excitedly from one new experience to the next. He really gives the character and the episode more than they deserve. The same is true for Jerry Ryan, whose performance as 7 of 9 is especially strong here, perhaps because it has to be. One's character arc is shoddy and rushed as written, including his closeness with 7, but Ryan manages to sell me on 7 actually caring about One by the time we get to their final scene in sickbay. And that final scene itself is a nicely written piece. 7 insists that One comply and allow the Doctor to treat his injuries. One, with as much emphasis as he can muster in his final moments, says, I will not. 7 says, you must comply, please, you're hurting me. And One tells her, you will adapt, and dies. Not too schmaltzy, it doesn't go on any longer than it should, it feels true to both characters, and it does have a little bit of an emotional impact, despite how underwhelming the rest of the episode has been up to this point. Nice work. I also like the way the nebula is used. It's introduced early, established as a dangerous place that ships can't go into, kickstarts the plot by causing the malfunction to the Doctor's mobile emitter that leads to the creation of the drone, and then Voyager just kinda hangs out next to it so the crew can study it for the rest of the episode. So when the Borg sphere arrives at the end, all One has to do to save the day is take control of the sphere and fly it into the killer nebula. It doesn't prevent the Borg from being further diminished as a threat, This is yet another instance of the Voyager crew encountering the supposedly mighty and terrifying Borg and getting away without a scratch and barely any effort exerted, but at least it's nice and clean, narratively speaking. Some strong performances and flashes of good writing can't save this one from being unoriginal and uninspired. Drone isn't the worst episode Voyager ever produced, but it's far from the best. It has its moments, but more often than not, it settles for paraphrasing another better episode and winds up feeling as though it's been hammered together from off-the-shelf parts rather than grown from scratch in a maturation chamber like a something. I don't know, I lost the metaphor. Those are my thoughts on Drone. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as I continue this batch of reviews of Borg episodes. Next up, we stick around Voyager's 5th season for one more week to have a look at the feature-length Borg extravaganza titled Dark Frontier. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.